Welcome to another episode of The Jury is Out. I'm Eric Veith.
I'm John Simon.
And John, today's episode is on voir dire. The most important thing about having a tribunal of any sort is to have people who are open-minded. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It seems simple, right? Just in the old days, you might say, can everybody raise your hand if you'll be fair? That doesn't work. So we're going to be talking about ways to make sure that everybody's fair.
You know, this is, I think, by far the most important part of the case and the most difficult. Everybody talks about how when do jurors make up their mind? You know, do they make up their mind? Or there are studies out there and articles talking about, you know, after opening statement, 80% of the jurors make up their mind, or 50 or 60 or whatever that is. And, you know, I believe depending, you know, where you try that case, there might be a good percentage of those jurors, you know, who made up their mind about your case before they left their house, okay? In other words, no matter what the evidence is in your case, they're just not going to award anything. And I've seen that. Eric, I had a case years ago. It was a medical malpractice case, and I represented the family of a 16-year-old girl who was the victim of malpractice and died, during the course of the treatment. It was a wrongful death case, and there was one person, a man on the panel that really didn't answer any questions, sat there with his arm folded. I didn't like the looks and the vibes I was getting. And so finally we took a lunch break and I came back in. This is about after 3 hours of questioning the panel. And I just zoned in and I said, hey, look, I'm getting bad vibes, you know, from looking at, I see it just this, what are you thinking about? Can you just tell me what you're thinking about? I just needed him to say something. And he said, you know, Mr. Simon, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. You could convince me that these doctors here were negligent and that ththese doctors caused the death of this 16-year-old girl, and I would give them $10. And that's what he said before he heard any evidence. So that shows you. That just shows you how important voir dire is.
Our standard in our jurisdiction is whether a juror has formed or expressed an opinion that may influence their judgment. And I find that interesting that the legislature has indicated either formed or expressed, because sometimes these opinions are not expressed, right? So they might be formed but not expressed, and that's our job, right, to get them to express those things. Otherwise, that law is useless because we have to get them talking.
I haven't met anybody ever that thinks they're unfair. I don't care who it is. The most unfair people that I know will under oath swear to God that they're completely fair and can give everybody a fair shake. So, obviously, the person that you're talking to is not going to be or shouldn't be the judge of whether or not they're appropriate to sit on the case. But so anyway, with all of this said, recognizing how important it is, I want to talk about my three goals, the three things that I try to accomplish in voir dire, and number one, and it's so critical, make them trust you, build trust, establish credibility with the panel. Number two, frame your issues, frame your case. If you got an issue that's troublesome for you, bring it out, talk about it, okay? And third, what we were talking about earlier, identify jurors who are just bad news for your case, bad news for your client. Identify them and get them off. And that's the most difficult thing out of the three.
That's all you got to do is those three things, huh?
Yeah, well, easier said than done. Eric, easier said than done.
So how do you do that?
I tell them at some point in voir dire, I will tell the panel that, it's okay if we lose. It's okay if we lose. If we don't do our job and prove the case to you, if we don't, present the evidence we need to win the case, that's on us. That's on me. It's not on you. And, it sounds kind of crazy for a plaintiff's lawyer to come into a courtroom with 80 people who are going to decide the case and say that. But I think, it's things like that, because then when you do tell them something later on that's important, they tend to, if they trust you, if they think you're honest, they're going to tend to believe you.
That's a short clip from The Jury is Out, a legal podcast for practicing attorneys, featuring nationally recognized plaintiff attorney John Simon and Missouri Top 30 appellate attorney Eric Veith. To hear more, subscribe to The Jury is Out wherever you get your podcasts.